Welcome in, guys. Adam here, the Orlando Drummer. Good to see you, and thank you all for tuning in to another drum lesson. So the fill that you just watched is the one that we're going to be covering today in this lesson, but I wanted you guys to know that I developed this fill while filming my Flam Chops lesson pack, which is now streaming on OrlandoDrummer.com. I know on YouTube we look for the tips and the tricks, those really specific orchestrations and the linear patterns, and that's what this fill will be. But if you're looking for the creative concepts and the building blocks and the ideas that lead me into these fills, I put all of that stuff inside the Flam Chops lesson pack on OrlandoDrummer.com, and I hope you guys will check that out right after today's lesson. But for today's lesson, what we really need to talk about are 5-note groupings. And 5-note groupings are kind of a monster. They're really annoying because they're not compatible with everything. 5 doesn't go into anything that we use regularly. But the first thing we need to do before we start talking about the difficulties of using a 5-note grouping is just learn the 5-note grouping. Our 5-note grouping in this lesson is kick, flam, kick, right, left. And before we go any further, I just want to sort of toy around with that on the drum set. So let's play around with just that pattern, no metronome. We're just going to freeform around the kit with that linear pattern and see what we can do with it. Let's check it out. All right, guys, hopefully it's easy to see how many different orchestration options you have with a fill like this. It can go in a million different places, but that is your job to go home and experiment with where you like to hear this pattern. But the difficulty in today's lesson is not the pattern in itself or where you can put it. The difficulty is actually in the phrasing. So let's talk about where these groups of 5 notes are going to go. Inside of a bar of 16th notes, we have 16 notes to work with. Well, we have a 5-note grouping, so we can only use 3 of those, and that's going to leave us with 1 leftover note. Now, normally, we would play those 3 groups of 5 first, and then we'd have 1 little extra note at the end. But in this case, I want you to do something quite a bit different. I want you to start your first grouping of 5 on the E of beat 1. So what that does is displaces everything over 1/16th note, and now that 1 extra note that we needed is on the downbeat of 1. That extra note is going to become just a single kick drum. So you've got a kick drum, and then your patterns of 5 begin on the E of 1. The only other rule that I'll give to you in this next example is that you've got to keep your right hand on the floor tom no matter what, and your left hand on the snare no matter what. Let's give it a shot at 60 and 90 beats per minute. All right, guys, our next step is a really, really easy one. All I want you to do is take the right hands that you were playing down on the floor tom and move those up to your stacker. Now remember, that doesn't include the flams. The flams are still played as the right hand on the floor tom, left hand on the snare. But the right hands that happen as the 4th note in every 5-note grouping, that has to go up to your stacker. Let's give that one a shot at just 1 speed. We'll try it at 90 beats per minute. All right, guys, we're on to our last step to complete this fill. It's a really simple step, but that doesn't mean it's an easy step. What we're doing is taking a kick drum and adding that underneath every stacker that we just moved our right hand to. So our pattern is now not linear because the 5-note grouping would now be kick, flam, kick, right, and a kick left. So all of a sudden we're out of that linear territory, and that makes everything a little bit more difficult. Now, of course, you could take just that pattern of 5 how it is now, and you could loop that like we did in the very first example, but it's completely up to you. There is no magic trick or secret. This is just a pattern you kind of have to internalize and get down. Let's give our final fill a shot at 2 speeds, 60 and 90 BPM. All right, guys, that's all I have for you today, but thank you so much for tuning into another lesson. It's much appreciated. Again, if you're looking for any of the creative concepts or the building blocks that I had to work through and develop in order to play a fill like this, I've included all of that content inside of the Flam Chops lesson pack, and you can stream that right now from OrlandoDrummer.com. Thanks so much, guys. Look forward to seeing you on the site, and I will catch you in another lesson. Later.